Here. Hi everyone. Before starting my presentation, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to be the part of this event. I really want to extend my special thanks to Emil. My name is Betul Yalcin and I am originally from Turkey. In Turkey, I worked for 14 years for the General Directorate for Disabled and Elderly People. And then during my professional tenure, I completed 2 Master of Science degrees, one in psychology and one in comparative social policy. And since 2011, I am doing my PhD study at the University of Leeds under the supervision of Mark Priestley and Anna Lawson. And I know that formerly you have been informed about today's presentation is going to be on the comparison of the UK, Sweden and the Ireland country cases. But later I decided, since we are already one of the countries who can teach lessons to the other countries, I decided to write a brand new report which reflects the Swedish case back to you. And today's presentation is going to be on the stakeholders' approach towards active labor market policies for disabled people. And I will also like to give some project background information. My study is funded by the Mercury Initial Training Network Program, Disability Rights Expanding Accessible Markets DREAM project, which is composed at least 6 universities from all over the Europe, which is trying to provide evidence-based policy recommendation to the governments and the EU to improve the implementation of the United Nations Conventions on disabled people's rights. And my research is titled as Active Labor Market Policies for Disabled People, a comparative analysis of the European member states. As I told you before, I'm doing my study under the supervision of Mark Priestley and Anna Lawson at the School of Sociology and Social Policy, University of Leeds. And my research aim is to identify how states can better promote the employment of disabled people in the open labor market. And to this end, I'm doing a situational analysis where there is 3 layers which all connected to each other to provide better, more comprehensive information about the active labor markets policies for disabled people. For the macro level, I'm comparing in what ways the 3 countries are similar and different in their active labor market policies for disabled people. At the meso level, I am trying to understand what works and what kind of active labor market policies or the combination of them reveal better employment policies for disabled people. And at the macro level, I'm just trying to understand the interpretation and the experience of the stakeholders of the employment policies for disabled people. The research question for the micro level is how employment of disabled people are interpreted and how are these policies experienced and interpreted by the stakeholders, particularly in private sectors. As you may see, there are different techniques that I'm employing for the analysis. And in today's presentation, it is basically going to be at the micro level analysis results. Statistics on employment of disabled people show that amongst the 80 million disabled European citizens, only 48% of them are actively involving in the employment, and with 53rd, I guess, percent, Sweden is amongst the countries which are doing much better, but yet there is still a huge gap between the employment rate of disabled people and the non-disabled people. So this is like a cross-cutting problem in all over the Europe. There are factors that are thought to hinder the employment of disabled people, and the existence of employment support system is to access to this support. Employers' awareness level, accessibility, availability of reasonable accommodation, training programs, flexible working conditions, and wage subsidies. Last but not the least, the attitudes are listed among the important factors that have an influence on the outcome, employment level outcome for disabled people. The literature on the attitudes towards employment of disabled people show that societies in general are aware of the discrimination and the prejudice towards disabled people, and they also believe that the equal opportunities plays an important role to improve the employment situation of disabled people. From the employer's perspective, they mainly display positive attitudes towards the employment of disabled people and believe that they are as productive as anyone else. But they still display concerns over the recruiting disabled people when their own recruitment behavior are questioned. Most of the time they say less favorable thoughts about the recruiting disabled people. Actually, it is much more easier when they are talking about the other employers. From the disabled people perspective, they are generally cited as displaying avoidance and withdrawal behavior. They just tend to not to involve even the job research because of the anticipation of the negative social attitudes, lower expectation of being recruited, and fear of being labeled as unproductive. It is kind of learned helplessness. Annette Henninger, as social policy scholar, marks the importance of the individual level factors, individual level interpretation of welfare policies, and she claims that state involvement in welfare issues can affect but cannot determine the individual level experiences, especially at the time of economic crisis. And therefore she postulates that active labor market policies, which generally involve sanctions and coercive measures, have a limited potential to create an effect in individual level behavior, especially for employers. As a conclusion, she says that it is essential to analyze individual interpretation and actions in the face of political regulation. Actually, this is the base that I place my research on. The aim of this particular analysis to provide information on stakeholders' approach to the current situation of the employment of disabled people and the related policies. To this end, I run analysis over the Eurobarometer opinion survey Sweden sub-data set, and there were like 1,033 respondents. 224 of them were disabled, acknowledge the interviewer as they are having a kind of chronic illnesses or a disability, and there were 219 respondents who hold the responsibilities of an employer, and the remaining respondents that I just call them as public. And I also run, I also hold semi-structured interviews during the last summer, isn't it, Emil? Yeah, during last summer. And I am also going to present the thematic analysis that I run over the this face-to-face interview text. There were 5 disabled employees and 8 employers and 5 social initiative and NGO representatives whose main focus is improvement of the employment of disabled persons. The research questions that is tried to be answered with this analysis is: how is the employment of disabled people perceived by the stakeholders? What kinds of social demographic factors lead differentiation? How is the employment of disabled people experienced and interpreted in the actual employment context? The quantitative analysis, which I run over the Eurobarometer Swedish subset, try to display the stakeholders' interpretation on the employment-related issues, and the qualitative analysis is just to illustrate those thoughts from the actual context of the employment, because most of the questions are either parallel or the same with the Eurobarometer survey questionnaires. This is one of the questions from the Eurobarometer survey, and when the respondents asked from Sweden were asked when a company wants to hire someone and has the choice between 2 candidates with equal skills and qualifications, which of the following criteria may, in your opinion, put one candidate at a disadvantage? And disability is one of those criteria. And as you can see, most of the respondents in Sweden think that at least more than half of the respondents in Sweden think that disability puts an individual at a disadvantage at the recruitment phase. And as you can see, disabled persons are more likely to agree to mention that there is a discrimination on the basis of disability in the recruitment phase. And again, the employers are a little bit less likely from the disabled people to agree with this statement, but in the public there is like 5 out of 10 Swedish individuals think that there is a discrimination on the basis of disability in the recruitment phase. The second question was that I run the analysis was that do you think that the economic crisis is contributing to an increase in discrimination on the basis of disability in labor market? And again, almost 7 out of 10 Swedish people think that yes, the recent economic crisis has led an increase in the discrimination on the basis of disability in the labor market. And there were also questions about the special measures to improve the diversity, but I also have to acknowledge you that this is not particularly designed to ask about the disability. This is just the question that is generated to understand the individual's thoughts about the diversity issues in general and all the vulnerable groups. To what extent do you support or oppose the following measures in the workplace to foster the diversity? Training on diversity issues for employees and employers. As you can see, almost 9 out of 10 Swedish people think that employers and employees should be trained on the diversity. There are just like quite few people who oppose to this question. And another question was that, to what extent do you support or oppose the following measures in the workplace to foster diversity? Again, the same question, but the sub-question is differs. Monitoring the composition of the workforce to evaluate the representation of the groups at risk of discrimination. I guess we can regard it as a quota system. My understanding is just like it is implying the quota system, because it is monitoring the composition of the workforce to evaluate. And as you may see, employers are less likely from the general public and the disabled people to agree that a monitoring of the composition should be one of the special measures that a government can take. But still, as you can see, there's like 6 out of 10 employers still agree, which is like a quite big ratio, but still compared to the other groups, they are less likely to agree that workforce should be monitored. Another special measures that is questioned with the Eurobarometer survey was monitoring the recruitment procedures to ensure that candidates from groups at risk of discrimination have the same opportunities as the other candidates with similar skills. Again, as you can see, almost in all the groups, 8 out of 10 respondents agree that, yeah, there should be monitoring recruitment procedures would be an acceptable special measures that a government can take. There is another analysis that I run over these Eurobarometers special survey, and actually this is not the analysis which is generally applied with the attitude surveys, but I believe this is one of the best, because it can give you the information not only if the factor that you are looking for have a significant effect on the, let's say, seeing disability as a discriminatory factor, but it also gives you information the likelihood of seeing the occurrence of having such an result. And amongst the factors that I put into the equation, by the way, the dependent variable that I put in the equation was seeing disability as a discriminating factor, was the dependent factor that I used, and the gender, familiarity with disability, educational attainment level, socioeconomic level, and gender, familiarity, so stakeholders, age groups, political orientation, and occupational status are the factors that I enter into the equation to understand who are more likely to see disability as a discriminatory factors, or what kind of factors are effective on seeing disability as a discriminatory factor. And the results showed that males are less likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor compared to females, and which were in line with the literature. And but unlike that my expectance, people who have disabled acquaintance are less likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor. Their chance of seeing disability as a discriminatory factor was 22% lower than the chance of those people who have a disabled acquaintance in their surroundings. And compared to people who left schooling before 15 years of age, people who left the school before let's say 20 years of age are more likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor in the labor market, with the chance 36% higher than those who have lower educational attainment level. For those who remain longer under the educational system, their chance of seeing disability was 58% higher than those who have lower educational attainment. And there were another group who were still students, and they displayed the highest agreement with this statement that disabled people are discriminated in the labor market, and they were 3 times more likely to agree to see the disability as a discriminatory factor. And compared to the when I look at the social economic level as the parent variable, the result of the logistic regression show that when the other factors, which are stakeholders, age groups, educational, gender, and all the other factors in the equation are controlled, compared to low SES, people from middle SES are less likely to disability as a discriminatory factor. And people from high SES, again, are less likely to disability as a discriminatory factor. And it was the low SES people who show the highest agreement with the statement that people with disabilities are discriminated on in the recruitment phase. And I also put the stakeholders factor, which is the employers, disabled people, and the public, as a parent factor to see the likelihood of occurrence of the agreement. And compared to disabled people, employers are less likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor. The chance of an employer to see disability as a discriminatory factor is 48% lower than the chance of a disabled person to agree to see disability as a discriminatory factor. And again, a person from the public are less likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor, and their chance of having a response that says disability as a discriminatory factor is 43% lower than the disabled people. And again, age groups, age was another factor that is that was claimed to be one of the influential factors on the attitudes towards disability or disabled people. And I also use age group as one of the factors. And the results show that compared to people who are aged, let's say who are younger, people who are in their early adulthood are less likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor. And as people get older, their likelihood of seeing disability as a discriminatory factor is decreasing. So it is again in line with the literature that says older people are less likely to be in the favor of the policies or to be in the favor of this, having a disabled person next to them. And people who are in their late adulthood, who actually they were more than 65 years of age, their chance were 63% lower than the youngest group. Politic orientation was again another factor. Compared to people who hold leftist political view, people who hold central political views are less likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor, and as you can see, their chance is 30%. And for the people who hold right political view, their chance of seeing disability as a discriminatory factor was 44% lower than those who hold the leftist political view. Again, another literature finding says that occupational status also makes difference in people's responses or people attitudes. That's why I also included occupational status in the equation. And people who are holding the managerial position was those who were displaying the highest ratio of seeing disability as a discriminatory factor. That's why I treat them as my comparison groups. And people who were self-employed are compared to managerial people compared to managers, people who are self-employed are less likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor, and the chance is quite low, 57%. They have 57% lower chance of seeing disability as a discriminatory factor compared to someone who are holding a managerial position. And employed people who are either professional, white collar or blue collar are less likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor, again, compared to those who are holding managerial position. And the chance, again, quite low, 50% lower. And okay, I think I can skip that one because I already talked about it. Okay, and the qualitative analysis results are those that I gather after after running thematic analysis over the interview text that I hold with the employers, disabled employees and NGO representatives. As you can see, I also included the same question into my interviews, and when I ask my interviewees when a company wants to hire someone and has the choice between two candidates with equal skills and qualifications, which of the following criteria may, in your opinion, put one candidate at a disadvantage? And again, this was questioning the disability. And regardless of their stakeholders' positioning, I mean employers, regardless of being employer, being NGO representative, being a social initiative representative or a disabled employee, they all say that all disability is a discriminatory factors in the recruitment phase. And again, as expected, all the interviewees believe that the economic crisis leads an increase in the labor market, but yet they still acknowledge the fact that they are doing much better compared to the other European countries. They are doing much better, and some of the interviewees, especially from NGOs, social initiatives, and disabled employees, they told that this is a long-standing situation that they have been experiencing in Sweden. I included some examples just to illustrate the real quotes from the stakeholders. One of the disabled employees, when she was talking about the job search history, she told that they wanted me always on an interview, but when they saw me, they said, "Oh, I don't think a blind person can do this sort of a job." And again, she also added that here in Sweden, it is hard to get a job for people using guide dogs because it is the same here. They can say no to a guide dog in a building. And another quote from an employer, he says that, "I think it's a lot of things that disqualifies you from being recruited to a new job. And one of those negative things that you can have with you when you are compared to another person is that you are disabled. And I think the worst thing that you can be in the workforce is colored and disabled. And if you are both, it will be very bad." The thematic analysis of later I will add some more examples from the quotes, but considering the economic crisis, the main topics that were embedded in the interview text was people talk about the impact of policies, impact of economic crisis on the policies, impact on people, and impact on policies. Considering the policies, they talk about the cuts in the fundings, especially the personal assistance, and they also talk about the change in the procedures and the impact on people. Most of the interviewees say that the economic crisis affect the society in general, but they still think that disabled people hit worse than the other part of the society. But still, they were thankful that they were not living in the other European countries. The impact on policies, there were just 2 employers who say that their business did not hit by the economic crisis because they were offering value products. But the rest, they were telling that they have to watch their expenses. They have to watch their recruitment, watch out to their recruitment. So the economic crisis is one of the main topics that surfaced from the interviews. Here are some more examples. One of the NGO representatives says that, but that is the fear of employing. Employers think that maybe it is going to be worse and they don't dare to employ people, especially person with disabilities in this case. But when you see in times of good economy, they don't employ that many. So I don't think that it has to do much with the economics in the society, but more about their attitudes. And a quote from employer. they highlights the competitive job market, and it is written, it is quoted as, it has made it much more difficult because today they need to compete with so-called normal people, and when there is not a lot of jobs out there, it will be much more difficult for them because the normal people will get the job. And another example, again from the disabled employee. Of course, I think with all my heart, this is the answer to the question, do you think that disability put a person at a disadvantage at the recruitment? And this is how she started. Of course, I think with all my heart. It could be different within some workplaces which are like more has a social profile that wants to have a broad representation in their labor force and so on. But in adverts, I think, of course, we are discriminated. They don't want someone who has a strange name or disability or a certain age and so on. For the policy tools, there were 5 main topics which were embedded into the policy, in the text, and there were recommendations about the general policy system, awareness raising, support, accessibility, and the funding. And most of the employers thinks that the support is the main crucial thing to improve the employment of disabled people. And again, the NGO and NGO representatives was again highlight the fact that it should be a prolonged employment, and some of the interviews says that there should be more support organization, and their capacity also has to be developed. And again, on the job support thought to be one of the better way to increase the employment of disabled people, rather than giving the vocational education beforehand. It will be much better to place them and then teach them. This is what they were telling about. Again, public awareness, culture change is the main issue in the society in general, but again, change in the attitudes of employers is raised as another policy recommendations that a government can take. Promote equality, and especially disabled people talk about yes, there is discrimination article, but there is no there is nothing to prevent them to say no, to employers to say no. So they have to be, the governments have to, or local authorities have to ensure the protection against discrimination. And again, another issue that raised from the interviews with the disabled employee, they were telling that the procedures are quite cumbersome and demanding, so they were just raising the ease of reducing the bureaucracy in the procedures will serve best to increase employment. And one or two interviews think that Sweden has to try code and promoting disability as a CSR issue and putting it into the sustainability programs would at least appeal the attention of the big companies or who have like a bigger workforce. Again, they have to do job match and informing employers about the advantages of having disability was again put forward as another policy recommendation. Share cost of the having a disabled employee in the workforce was again raised a lot. Wage subsidy, it was another recommendation that is continuing the wage subsidies program is one of the other policy tools that is recommended by the interviewers. Again, accessibility, as we all know, is one of the main factors which prevent every person almost to involve either in social, educational, or economic life. Do I have time? Okay. Conclusions. Compared to employers and the public, disabled people are more likely to see disability as a discriminatory factor and believe that the economic crisis lead an increase. Recalling the qualitative analysis, all interviews believe that disabled people are discriminated against. Economic crisis lead an increase in the discrimination. While employers place more emphasis on the need of support, disabled people highlight the necessity of easing the procedures to enjoy their rights in full terms, as well as the legal protection against discrimination. And while the NGOs and social representatives were more concentrated on the sharing the experiences and the best practices, awareness raising, and prolonged support. And the recommendations for the government, municipalities, and local authorities based on the analysis. While designing the awareness-raising programs to change the attitudes, put more emphasis on people who are self-employed, older, male, right-wing political orientation, coming from high socioeconomic status, and have a lower educational attainment. Again, increased awareness on disability, building a mechanism where support systems is well established and prolonged is another recommendation that I can put forward. Reducing the procedures to promote the barrier. As you can see, these are indeed not my own recommendation, but the recommendations that is reflected by the interviewees. Developing collaboration mechanism to ensure the involvement of all stakeholders, and should ensure the full protection against discrimination. And I think this was one of the main thing that I also observe in the interviews from other countries, that they believe that there should be a reward system, but it shouldn't involve any sanctions. Yes, support, more awareness, more reward, but no punishment. And thanks a lot for your attention. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.